I'm coming to you today to ask for your help in bringing together an incredible project, the Community Mindfulness Center. This inclusive space is intended to promote the well-being of our community locally and abroad, as well as to help us discover a sense of well-being and basic goodness. We are trying to raise $1 million for this state-of-the-art facility, which will provide both spiritual and secular programming. We really hope that you can come together to help us make this dream into a reality.
The title of today's Dharma talk is Protect the Mirror. The mirror is, you know what a mirror is. It's something that doesn't lie. If you stand in front of a mirror, you see what is there. Unless you're projecting onto what you see ideas about who that is, who you are, how you're doing, or any other situation that might involve something you are looking at. We need to protect the mirror of the Buddha, of the awakened one, of the one who was completely sane, who did not fight with anything, who did not agree with anything, and who did not ignore anything. We need to protect that which he taught, which is also a mirror, the Dharma. Studying the Dharma will help you begin to see who you are and what this is and how the mind works. Protect that. Find a way to protect that. You can protect that by helping this situation with this monastery, with this community mindfulness center, which we're trying to extend the way of looking at the mind based on sanity, not based on believing in something. As I've said many times, I don't even believe in Buddhism. Buddhism is a raft. A raft is something you float on to cross the sea of samsara, the ocean, the river of passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, and fear, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, life and death. Protect this. Find a way to protect it. Your way of doing that may be totally different than anyone else's. Yours may be as simple as returning to the wall, bowing to your altar, sitting down, and training your mind to see clearly. That's protection. Protect that. Protect that. Find a way to protect that in your life, which helps you see the truth, not just believe in the crazy insanity that's going on in the world. It's everywhere. You watch the news or listen to the news for 20 minutes. It's just wild and crazy, as we all know. But if you look here, look within. Very simple thing. It's not something I invented, but look within, and that's where you see the truth. It's not about believing in anything. That's a misunderstanding. This is belief. As soon as you find something you believe in, you get to cover up everything. There's no longer any mirror. That's just what you believe. A structure that someone is probably standing behind and controlling so that they can control you. Don't believe anything. Don't believe anything I say, certainly. Don't believe anything anyone says. Don't even believe your own thoughts or emotions or feelings. They're misunderstandings. They're additions onto what is actually happening. It's as if you looked into a mirror and then just turned away and just had your own ideas about what that was. If you look into a mirror, you will not know what it is in the conventional sense. But you will know what it is not. But you have to spend some time doing that. And what is it not? I can tell you, but you need to see it. I could tell you, I've been telling you for years. It's not separate. If you look out here, you can't see anything that's separate from that which is observing it. This is an ancient teaching, goes back. Forever. Ancient teaching. You can, or community. If you do, we have one. If you don't, go do something else. Go find it out yourself. You may need to just be a landscape designer for the next 40 years. That is not incorrect. It's just circular. Doesn't make it wrong, just makes it circular. Dizzy. Well, it's not dizzy unless you realize it's a circle. Then it starts to get dizzy. And then you start looking for a way off the merry-go-round. This is too much. This is too much. So then we do what? How do we interrupt that? Vacation. Yeah, let's take a vacation from the merry-go-round. His Holiness, the Karmapa, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, they do not take breaks. They do not sit aside, as someone once said in a picture taken at about maybe it was 1980. Here's His Holiness, or maybe it was His Holiness, the Karmapa, taking a break. And Trungpa Rinpoche commented on that and said, take breaks. No breaks in this. It's solid, just this. You can do that if you're interested. If you're not, as I said, maybe there's something else coming around the corner for you. As long as there's corners, there's going to be something coming around it. This is called relative truth, and it's extremely convincing, but it is unreal. It is an illusion. Don't believe me? Look in the mirror. Where is the mirror? Right here. Where is the mirror? Relatively, the mirror is the wall, but that's how you get to see the ultimate mirror, what Trungpa Rinpoche called the cosmic mirror. I looked up the Mandarin for protect the mirror, and it's Baojing. And that's what had I been able to have Trungpa Rinpoche's ear back in the 1970s when I'd just come out of the Marine Corps a few years before then and realized what the whole warrior thing was about. And he was starting to call his Dorje Kasang warriors and Shambhala warriors. I was in big disagreement with that. I don't think it's workable to call anything a warrior if you're trying to live in peace. I'm not saying he was incorrect. I think he was working with himself, with his training as a tulku, and as understanding our society, which is very warlike. The whole world is warlike. I think he was trying to interface with it in such a way that there would be some communication there, rather than set himself or ourselves aside as a spiritual path that lived on a mountaintop and isolated from the rest of the world. I feel that his idea of enlightened society was to join in with it and try to change it, you could say, from within, maybe. I don't know. Didn't have his ear, as I said. But I think Baojing or mirror protector would have been a better word for a Dorje Kasang or a protector or a guard. So, but everyone is doing that. Some people might need to wear a uniform. Maybe not. So I think it's time we change. We've been chanting the Sandokai. I think we're rotating to the Song of the Jewel Mirror Samadhi. Isn't it time we change over to that? Song of the Jewel Mirror Samadhi, which talks a little bit more about that mirror quality of the mind. Chanting that several times a week. So maybe we could do some questions around that, around the idea of a mirror. Yes, sir.
When I look at the mirror, Sungji, when I look at the mirror, it's often others that come out of the mirror, and their thoughts about me.
We keep looking at it. And you do that by holding still, because if you're moving around, then because the body and mind are not two different things, when you move, you're actually affecting that part of the consciousness that is able to see into the mirror. So if you're on the move in any way, even picking your nose, anything has to be very still. It doesn't have to be very long. It could be 30 seconds, but total stillness, not rigidity. And do that a lot. Yet at some point, you'll just sit there. You won't move much at all. It just takes a long time. Or depending on your particular body, you might move shift around for a few minutes and sit for 7 or 8 minutes very still, then go back to shifting and being a little bit restless. Some people move constantly. I sit in here and sit somewhat still, but not always. I shift a lot also. But I sometimes sit and watch someone. I never see them sit still for more than 10 seconds. Usually they're slightly shifting their hands. Is this wrong? No, not incorrect. It's just my response to that is try to hold still. It's a practice. It's not a result. You don't have to succeed at it. It's the intention. It doesn't matter if you ever sit still. It's the intention. So same thing with when you see other people and their ideas, excuse me, just continue to look at that. If you look at it without adding passion, if you look at it without subtracting judgment, and if you look at it without distracting yourself or ignoring it, just receive what it is, no matter how bitter, how sweet, how neutral, just receive it. Eventually, this is in the idea of time and space. In the illusion, you'll begin to see that what you thought was real is an illusion. You don't need to leave the illusion to see the illusion. In fact, in fiction, you may have to actually participate in the illusion in order to see the illusion. More?
It's the other quality that I'm wondering about.
What about it?
How do you deal with that?
Stop dealing with it. If you can make the statement of the question, how do you deal with it? You've already left it. Before you ask the question, that was it. Just smell it, taste it, receive it, think it, feel it, hear it. You're all alone there. Be alone. Doesn't mean there are others around, but be alone. Have a willingness to just be alone and not know. Because knowing in the conventional sense is a cover-up. Knowing in the ultimate sense is not knowledge in the relative sense, but it is knowledge. Another word for that is wisdom. They had to change the name because wisdom doesn't really know anything but wisdom. Another question somewhere? Yes, Ondo.
Ondobai, what do you mean by protect? How can we protect?
So one thing is make it in the individual sense, make a schedule, return to the cushion, protect it. Don't just assume that you're somehow, because you're so inspired to practice, that your ego mind is going to go along with you. You'll find ways to get away from that. Ego does not want to be seen. I talk to people every day and watch them cover up their egos, cover up the identity that is unreal. Protect that, protecting the ego. But if you begin to look at what this is, you begin to understand that you protect the time that you set aside to sit, or the time you set aside to chant the sutras or study the Dharma. We have all these study groups. That's all very deliberate on my part, is to set these up so people have the opportunity to study together. Sangha, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, teacher, teaching community. These three are very necessary. I think there's 8 of them right now. Isn't that true? I attend every one of those. I rarely fail. And that's not because I have a lot of extra time. It's just I have intense devotion, commitment to do this. I don't get anything out of it. If I were getting something out of it, I would have stopped a long time ago. There's no payoff in it, other than people's neurosis and craziness and objections and complaints about others and about themselves. It's relentless, but that's just samsara. Well, that just goes with the so-called program. So protect it by returning. Don't maintain, because maintenance falls apart, and ego makes use of that maintenance idea in terms of success and failure. So just return. Don't have to accomplish anything. That's relative stuff. Yes.
Ondobai, are we in some ways protecting the illusion
Say more.
when we're always have a projection of what the mirror is,
Yes.
or the Sangha is, or the Buddha is?
Yes, that's why if you believe your thoughts, then you're protecting the illusion. This is vividly unreal. It's not just kind of sneakily unreal around the corner. You have to look at it just right to see. No, this is it. As I pound on this thing, trying to say the very intensity of your emotions and your thoughts, that is the unreality. And when you begin to see that, you see that people are totally locked down by thinking that they're somebody and they're real. This is disgustingly unreal. It's so incredible that the whole world believes this, and we're willing to kill each other, pull each other's bodies apart, murder each other, and watch the blood gush all over the place. We love that. We even use it for entertainment. Have you noticed? And we love to watch blood and guts. We know this is an illusion deeply, but we cover it up with, well, that's that. No, this is the movie. This is the movie. Please see it. If you see it, you won't stop suffering necessarily, but you probably will stop dumping it on others and blaming others for how you feel. It's painful to do that, to really be responsible for your emotions from the 13th century, which are trying to come out and get some kind of recognition. You can do that. You don't need the 13th century. My commentary is just pointing to there's no time there. It's just this. Consciousness is just this. If we go back to their past lives, well, yeah, but that's an illusion too. You may need to talk about that way so that you can have some access to emotions that seem to come from somewhere else. There is no somewhere else. There's just this. This is what it means, turning around at the basis of consciousness, the Alaya Vijnana. If you see what this is, everything just comes apart. The time and space come apart. Everything comes apart, and there's no accomplishment of anything. Nothing occurs, as His Holiness the 16th Karmapa said in 1981, just before he passed away. Nothing happens. A profound statement from someone who is looking at that, not someone who is speculating on the ultimate nature of things and coming up with a set of contradictory words. He looked at it, he saw it, he said it, and then people made bumper stickers out of it for a few years, and they faded. More?
If we're on the returning, and yet we're returning to projection, are we strengthening the ego?
No. The important thing is to return, because the projection and the reality are not two different things. This non-duality has no limit to its extension. So that's why when you actually see the illusion, that is ultimate reality. But the illusion doesn't necessarily go away. I don't care what it does. You just know, that you don't have to get rid of an ego because you see that it's unreal. Doesn't matter if it's there. It's just that it doesn't have much say so. I sometimes used to refer to it as a clown on the roof. It's still around. It's still acting up. It still looks ridiculous. But it really has no purchase on your everyday situation, other than it may be involved at times. You may feel your ego operating in different areas of your life, especially if something comes from one direction that tends to trigger certain parts of your consciousness. But the consciousness it's as if the consciousness were beyond the self-centeredness of ego. It's as if the consciousness were not separate from this room, not separate from the sky, not separate from the trees, not separate, and also not the same as that. That's why it's so difficult, because the ego wants to say, well, if we're not separate from everything, doesn't that mean we're all one? No, that's bullshit. I'm using that kind of a word because I'm saying that's just what it is. It's just bullshit. Someone to say that we're all one. Not true. Yes.
Zuko bowing, is what you're saying with protect the mirror different from polish the mirror or don't let dust collect?
Yes.
In what way?
Polishing the mirror and don't let dust collect is a teaching I don't necessarily agree with. I can see where it might be useful at times. When it comes from ancient times. You know who said that? He was standing right next to Wenong. What was his name? Oh, okay. Anyone else know? Any of you scholars? I bet Chiazan knows, but he's not here. I don't think he's here. He might be here somewhere.
Also good bowing. So what does it mean to protect the mirror that isn't trying to clear it of the illusion or clear it of delusion?
What I mean by protect the mirror is the Buddha, the teaching of the Buddha, the teaching of the Dharma, and the teaching of the Sangha. You're relating to Sangha every day. There's a teaching there. If you're a student, you're learning from everyone. Even if someone is acting crazy or acting unreasonable, it's a teaching if you're a student. Even if someone is acting extremely clear and helpful and supportive, still a teaching. Right and wrong are extra. We add those onto it. You actually put stuff on the mirror. So I'm not agreeing with the idea of polishing a mirror. A mirror doesn't need polishing. It just needs looking into. If it needs anything, you just look into it. And if there's anything on the mirror and you just look at the mirror, that will come apart. Anything that's added onto it, as far as the dust or anything like that, those are all projections. They can't last, but they will persist if you try to get rid of them, because they react. They take on a reality because they're being fiddled with. So they, I must be something. I must be this dust must be real somehow. No, that's the illusion too. The mirror is actually reflecting the dust. How could you put dust on a mirror without the mirror reflecting it? Consciousness does not have a form. Therefore, it's unobstructed. Unobstructed, unless there's some identity with me or with this man over here, that woman over there, if there's some kind of identity that has to be protected, then the dust will stop you from seeing into the mirror. So that's why it's so important to continue to return to the cushion, return to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, return to the three jewels. Use that simple structure to train your mind more. Yun.
Biyun bowing. What does it mean that we're always looking at our own mind?
It means that if I look at the clock, or if I look at my hand reaching out, or if I look at you and I look at your body language, or I look at Gabe's head drop down, or I see someone move out of the corner of my eye, or if memories of some particular event show up in my mind, all of it is my mind. That tripod is my mind, and not mine in the possessive sense, but it's not separate from the consciousness that is observing it. And I'm saying this all conceptually, but the actual understanding of that is way, way beyond, to use another relative term, is beyond the concept. You can't conceptualize what this is. And it's actually not even an experience, because in order to have an experience, you have to have an experiencer, a seer, a smeller, a taster, a thinker, a feeler, and something to being felt or seen or smelled or tasted. And that duality is collapsed into consciousness only. More.
Biyun bowing, how are you my mind? And just by saying that, my mind, who is it mine? Do I possess
It's
it?
just a way of talking about it until we see that there is no mine. There's no that particular pronoun doesn't work, but we need something to be able to talk about it. So everything is mind, or everything is my mind, everything is your mind, everything you look at is a projection of what you're looking at. Instead of, you're not seeing what you're looking at, you're seeing a projection of it. And that can take on lots of different forms depending on how much you're involved with the three poisons, how much your ego mind is being supported by that part of the consciousness that thinks there is a person identified with this particular body that I have named Biyun, that used to be called Jesse. More?
Biyun bowing, do you and I have different minds?
Relatively, yes, and ultimately, no. So the way of talking about it. So relatively, if you're having thoughts or you have feelings and emotions and you think they belong to somebody, to you, then that's your identity gets together and feels a polarity or a structure that's separate from everything else, called relative truth. Samvriti Satya is the fancy Sanskrit word for it. The ultimate word is Paramartha Sattva, Paramartha Satya, which means that there isn't anyone. You've lost your mind. Yeah, there's no center to the mind. There's no center. There's no fringe. It's just consciousness. There's still a body here. There's still a hand moving, but it doesn't belong to me. That doesn't mean that I or this consciousness, this body can't reach for that clock and move it aside, or I can't wave this. In fact, in fiction, I'm even more liberated to do that because I don't need any purpose for anything. Everything is without purpose other than the vow to be with all things, save all beings. That's the only thing that remains over here. That doesn't mean I don't have weird thoughts or aggressive thoughts. I was having aggressive thoughts this morning. I just watched them. If you watch MSNBC for a little while, you'll probably have some aggressive thoughts. And what do you do with them? Don't do anything with them. If you add anything onto them, have you noticed that? If you think a bunch of stuff and you think a bunch of stuff about what you've been thinking about, how it gets kind of complicated. Yeah? No, somewhat. Talking to someone who hasn't covered up their true nature yet. Yes.
Even bowing. How can the ego hide out off the cushion?
Usually with stories and ideas and concepts and opinions, but quite a bit of stories about you see something and you immediately, not just you, but any of us, me, you start to think about this and that. Well, she said, well, she's going there. I wonder if she's going here or there. I wonder if she did what she said. She said she was going to clean this or clean that, but probably didn't do it again. So those kind of, and that all kind of creates a kind of a fabric of illusion that seems very, very convincing. We live our whole day like that. If you remembered everything you thought in one day, you wouldn't have a room for all the other memories in your life. It'd be just too thick with stuff. I mean, there's so many things happening in the mind. A little thing like how your clothes feel when you reach for something, how my sleeve is moving up my arm a little bit. Those never go anywhere. Once you have that, once that shows up in consciousness as something you're receiving in terms of the nerve endings, whether it's sense of touch, sense of taste, sense of hearing, sense of smell, sense of thinking, sense of feeling, any of those, anything you're receiving there never is lost. It's always stored in the alaya, so to speak. It's always accessible. I think they've even hypnotized people and taken them back to when they were born or something like that. And all the memories back there, you might have had some experience from that being a psychiatric nurse. You don't really lose any memory of anything. It's always, you can find it. It's just, it might take some kind of a deliberation and a technique to locate it more.
I lost the question. Thank you.
You find it?
No.
Okay. That sounded kind of whiny.
Want it back.
Arnold, questions just go off, push them off the edge of the cliff. Anyone else out here? Milka,
Yoka bowing. Question on YouTube
yes.
from Shara. Is
Shara,
practicing discernment more important than feeling the need to protect oneself?
I would use the word discernment as it's available. You could use that, but I'm saying practicing sitting meditation. And I'm biased here. I have to say it. There's lots of ways of training the mind, and I've practiced a few of them. The one that seems the most important to me is the very simplest: sit down, hold still, get to know yourself. So no production at all, no techniques, no mantras. And I've chanted millions of mantras. So I know what that's about. And I still teach that to some extent, depending on the individual. I teach it to individuals, not as a general teaching, just to certain people. Not because they're any better. Sometimes they're having a lot of trouble and need some kind of reference point like that. So coming back to your question, I think sitting meditation, sit down, hold still, watch the movement of the mind, and do it hour after hour, week after week, day after day, minute after minute, second after second. decade after decade until you realize your true nature. What else are you going to do with your life? But besides go in circles, this is the only way you can actually go directly toward the ultimate understanding of what it even means to be a living being. Don't miss your life. Don't miss your life running in circles, bumping into this, bumping into that, complaining about that, and trying to move that over. Constant chitter chatter about everything. Sit down, stabilize by watching the instability. I'll say it again. Stabilize by observing how unstable the mind stream is when the body is held very still. And just watch that, observe that, come and go, make no comment, no elaboration. Realize your true nature. You can do that. I'm here to encourage you to do that. Shara.
Views and things. What threatens the mirror?
Thought patterns, belief, opinions, judgments, evaluations, conclusions. Any kind of otherness that shows up can threaten the mirror. Nothing can ultimately threaten it because it's a cosmic mirror. So eventually it might be 300,000 years from now before this particular consciousness or this one or this one or this one shows back up in another form where there's a possibility that you have 30, 40, 50 years to actually look at the relative truth so you can return to your true nature instead of continuing to wander in samsara. So what threatens is anything that is other than just observing. Anytime you're producing, threatens the mirror. I mean, if it's temporary, it just means that lifetime after lifetime, you'll be back. You'll be back. When I'm saying that, am I condemning you to something? No. And should you believe me? No. I'll believe anything I say. It's just how it looks to me. If I say I'm looking across the room and I see a giant duck 1,500 feet high, and I'm pretty good at distances. Did you have a question about the giant duck? Well, don't change the subject yet.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Milka
Don't change the subject. Ask about the giant duck.
Can we see the giant duck in the mirror?
Yes, that's the only thing you can see. Now you can ask your other question.
Milka bowing. It sounds like you're saying that cosmic mirror needs protecting, but also seems like it can't break. Can it break in any way?
No, yeah, but it can be ignored or avoided, or we can go for this and push that and shut down passion, aggression, ignorance, passion, aggression, ignorance, that triplicity that is so it's powerful. You don't have to study Buddhism to see that sometimes you push aggression, sometimes you draw or pull passion or want or crave, and sometimes you just shut down and turn away. That's just very simply put. That's a basic Buddhist teaching, but it's everywhere. Don't need to study Buddhism. You can see that. And what is the idea there? Just observe that rather than add to it or comment on it or conclude something or reinforce it. Well,
Milka bowing back to the duck. Does the what does the giant duck show us about our minds?
that everything is fabricated. I just invented that. Would you prefer a really tiny squirrel? Got it. Which way is it facing? Say it. Say it. Which way is it facing?
Outside.
No, it's not. Disgusting. I've given you all this help, and what do? Screw it up. You see what I'm saying? We want to be right. We want to be correct. And all I have to do is sit here and just not have a reference point, which I wasn't born that way. I was born trying to kill myself or kill others. That's why I went in the Marine Corps. I thought maybe that's what I'm supposed to do is murder people. I need training, starting with myself. Go ahead.
Milka bowing. Is anything in the mirror correct?
No, nor is it incorrect. Good question.
Milka bowing. What's the reflection?
There's nothing there, reflection but that's why it's frightening to ego, because the ego kind of, that part of the consciousness is still consciousness. It's just that, excuse me, it's wrapped up into a knot of me, and paranoia. And it's paranoia. The paranoia is actually accurate. It should be afraid, because its central authority of me, and my stuff, my ideas, and so on, is going to come apart and seem to be unreal. So there is a threat there. It's just that it's not true. So fundamentally, there's no threat, because your actual identity is consciousness only. It has no boundary, has no dimension, is not confined by space, time, or any of those other considerations that are part of the structure of illusion.
Sokuzan, when you were talking to Bune earlier,
Sure.
yes, you were saying that we don't see what's actually there. We're just looking at our projections.
Yes.
On everything. If we
Yes.
see what's actually there, is there just nothing there?
No, we see ourselves. You actually see your true nature everywhere, and it's still an illusion. It's still in the form of a living being, or this person over here. But you also see that they don't know what this is. They're still struggling with their identity, and they're still, just like when I went after Mioka a minute ago. So his structure it has to do with his identity. So my structure has to do with the identity of over here that I see as unreal. So therefore I can fiddle with it. I don't have to have a position on anything. The only position I have is the vow. If I need reference point, I don't return to anything but, am I saving all beings? Am I putting others before myself? I'm working on it. Hard to do. It's not a conclusion. It's not success. As long as there's a living form, you're going to have passion, aggression, and ignorance nudging you this way and that way. Yes, sir. You're next.
So the seeing of the ego is what you're talking about.
What's your question?
Is it to see the ego?
SEE? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Valley. Is it important for me to know the difference between the original thought perception or other sense perception and the add-on?
So very good. So that's something that will show up sitting facing the wall. That's something we start to get some understanding of. As you're sitting still and as you're observing what arises, this doesn't happen the first couple of weeks, couple of years even. You begin to watch how your mind brings something up. Something arises in your mind and it feels like you're thinking it, but really you don't think anything. Thoughts just arise. There's no thinker. So first, that part of it starts to show up, that you realize that thoughts are just spontaneously arisen. They're just coming and they're going. Then you watch how you add on a thought, because consciousness finds whatever form it needs. And if there's any insecurity going on, paranoia, ego, then you will produce something out of it, because consciousness gets to do whatever it wants. It's an astonishing understanding of the nature of the mind, the nature of consciousness. So for a while you will watch that, and then in the sitting practice, and you'll probably get different with each person, you'll get pretty good at watching and seeing that you're bullshitting yourself. So what happens over time is eventually less and less happens while you're sitting. Like, it can be quite relaxing. The training that's going on in the mind is below the level of awareness or consciousness that knows something and is in a deeper level. But you're still being trained. That's why sometimes sitting in meditation over a period of several hours, like a 4-hour block sit on a Thursday or on a Monday or some other day, or the month of February, which we're going to coming up to pretty soon, you might feel like not much has happened. The time kind of didn't seem really long, or other times it'll seem quite long. And then it'll go back to feeling like it wasn't 4 hours, it's more like maybe an hour. And so all of that happens. And so getting to your question, I'm saying that begins to show up in your everyday life. You find that you're able to more quickly see that instead of receiving something as it is, you have ideas and comments about it. The teaching here, from this point of view here, is don't do anything with that. Just continue to observe, because if you try to correct yourself too soon, then you know, it's like you see something coming towards you, but you only see enough of it to make you paranoid, to make you want to control it. So you try to stop it or change it instead of being fundamentally surrendered, to use a fancy word. So otherwise you're taking a part out of the desire to be right, the desire to correct it too soon. So it's a willingness. It's called renunciation. The traditional word is just a willingness to receive whatever shows up, including the illusion. You're slowly becoming more and more aware of how completely disturbed you are. It's okay, because it's even that is unreal. There is no reality separate from ultimate reality. Yes.
You and bowing. I can always find something that is outside of myself. I can always find something to align with the senses I'm feeling within myself.
Yes.
It's like a magnet, you know, and there's the blame in there, right? If I just bought different socks or sat more or anything, they didn't do that or say that, I can always find something to match that up and blame it. And where is the mirror where is the mirror in that?
That is the mirror. That is the mirror. Just less and less adding, less and less subtracting, and less ignoring. This now, and with some people, this just comes apart all at once. Sometimes this is called sudden illumination. Depends on the karma that you bring into this lifetime. There's no guarantee that's going to happen for anyone. To some people, it's just they suddenly awaken. Some people suddenly awaken without any practice at all. That's how really, really unpredictable consciousness is. There's several examples of that in history, of people who just suddenly became illumined. And because they had no reference point for it, they felt like they were going crazy. And were they? From the relative point of view, yes. That's why it's called crazy wisdom. It's because there's you have no reference point for anything. So you don't get to be relatively sane. So you just continue to do what you're doing. As I've said many times, just get to the cushion as much as you can, have as much time sitting still, protect that mirror that you're slowly looking at by continuing to sit still and observe, sit still and observe. There's not going to be, the mirror won't be able to reflect back what is actually here as long as there's a lot of chaos going, you know, about the socks and about this without being observed. So you don't have to fix that, but you need to watch that that's what you're doing. You're coming in with that various kind of chemistry. Yes?
It just sounds pretty,
Yes, disappointing.
yeah.
Yeah. But the downside of disappointing or the frustration is just that. But the upside of that is this is the first noble truth of the Buddha, which I return to over and more in the last 5-10 years. I've been saying, just if you're in trouble, if you're having difficulty, just go to the first noble truth. The first noble truth is what? What is it? You know?
What are you looking at?
You.
Life is suffering.
Life is suffering, yeah. I think anyone who's looked at Buddhism for 15 minutes is going to know the first noble truth. Quite often we leave that, but well, what is that? Well, it's caused by wanting something else. Well, we know that. Well, then what can happen? Well, it can come to an end. Well, and then how do we do that? Well, we train our minds. And so very, very simple. It's a very complicated stuff. And what comes to an end is not the suffering. The suffering may persist as long as there's a human form. There's going to be pain of some kind, various kinds. But the understanding of that will go way beyond. You'll actually understand the why for. You'll understand the second noble truth. Why wouldn't you? It's not that that's wrong. You have to stop wanting. If something hurts you, and you don't want that, and if there's a human form of consciousness here, of course, you would not want to have that pain. So ordinary. It's when it gets into the psychological area that our whole life is running by that, and we're starting to punish others because we're blaming them for how we feel. If you think someone else is causing your pain, then you're working with a misunderstanding of it. It's not that it can't be understood, and it just might take some time. Yes, sir.
Shenji, I'm bowing. Are there other forms of protection beyond returning to the 3 jewels and studying?
Yeah, give money to the teacher. That works. Well, I mean, it's a, generosity, support what you do, support the Sangha, come over and work with the Samu tasks, to help clean the carpeting and, whatever. Some people are more into doing that. Sanho is someone who is blind. He's not here today, but he comes in and cleans the bathrooms. So someone who's, what's the word? It's handicapped, I guess, in some way, but we all have some kind of a handicap. Some of them aren't quite so visible, no pun intended. But he comes and cleans the bathroom, does a good job, doesn't he? Haven't you had to correct him a few times? Yeah, that one time says, how about this corner over here or something like that. And he also, not to think he would mind, he's buying a house, which is several blocks away. It took him 9 minutes. Tell me if I get this right. 9 minutes to get from that house. This is with his walking stick, going block after block, about 5 blocks or something like that. Took him 9 minutes, but then when he got to Anderson Court, which has no curbs on it, this is a very interesting area of sort of boundaries. No curbs on it. It took him, was it 20 minutes? 20 minutes to get like a half a block from the edge of Harvard Street, where Garuda House is, down to the monastery gate, because of the reference points are gone. And so that's why it's so, I'm just using that as an example of what it's like to do sitting meditation. Sitting meditation is like being blind, and it's like sitting still, and it's like not having any reference points, because you're working with an ultimate understanding. Now, that metaphor only works so far because you've got to get to the monastery. But what you're trying to get to through this lack of reference points we call shikantaza is to see the ultimate understanding of the nature of consciousness, not to get to the monastery, although there's a similarity. Sir.
Yoga bowing question on YouTube from Susanna. Can you talk about acceptance?
About what?
Acceptance.
Yes, don't accept anything. Thank you for that question. Don't accept anything, don't reject anything, and don't ignore anything. Those are the 3 poisons. Don't do anything. Don't do anything unless you have to. And then if you have to, that means that the causes and conditions that arise in your life, you just have to go to work, or you have to go to the restroom. You have to. Then you're working with a very, very, what is it called? Nuts and bolts of the situation, the actuality of the situation, rather than some kind of a daydream about it. So don't accept that. I'm not saying that you need to go the other way and start rejecting or pushing away, but accepting, it ties into the chemistry of accepting, ties into an area of the ego that feeds on being someone who's accepting things. You sometimes hear somebody say it, you can almost detect the kind of the smelly factor of it when they say, well, I just learned to accept that. Sometimes their tone of voice will betray that. Let me see if I can do that. Well, Vern, for a long time, I really fought against stuff like that. And then I just learned to accept it. Now I'm okay. How's that sound? No? No? So don't accept it. Susanna, don't accept, but don't reject and don't ignore. So just look at that. And interesting, I'm going to use my hands here to go like this. If you accept it, it closes down. I mean, it stops being what it was that was challenging you, because you've not only accepted it, but you don't really know what you've accepted. What you've really accepted is the belief, or you've actually reified your fear. So you are avoiding something by accepting something. And I would say, rather than accept it, or rather than reject it or fight with it, or rather than ignore it, just see what it is. Because if you look at what it is, eventually it will begin to show up what it actually is. And what is it actually? Not separate. That's when the mirror here and the mirror over here collapse into each other. There is no more mirror. The mirror is a relative way of talking about this. There's no mirror. I'm happy to receive other questions, maybe for another 2 minutes.
Are there any on Zoom?
Are there any questions on Zoom? Hey, questions? Mm,
Kayun bowing. Sorry, my camera's not working.
That's all right. Your voice is working.
Thank you.
Well,
I was wondering how protector chants might help us to protect the mirror bowing.
yes. So protector chants, and some of you have heard those, and some of them are just outrageously tantric or have all kinds of negative images. Well, we have a lot of negativity in our minds. Anybody here doesn't have extreme negativity sometimes? Well, this is a way of addressing it symbolically. It's just a symbolic way of addressing it. We ask those negative energies to help us. We ask the positive energies to help us. Wrathful, sometimes in Tibetan iconography and teaching, it's wrathful and peaceful deities. We're talking about aspects of consciousness that we really can't find, but are there. And they're there if you might have to talk to them a little bit. You might have to supplicate. And that this is not theism, and we're not looking for some deity that's going to save us. No, you're talking to aspects of your own mind. This mind doesn't belong to anybody, and it's totally yours. It's totally yours. You get to have everything. Consciousness always finds its own form. This is the first tenet of the Order of Immediate Light, which we founded here several years ago, a few years ago. Order of Immediate Light, coming together, the Zen tradition and the Buddhist Tantric tradition together. So we have a protector shrine over here of Mahakala, and it's not something you believe in. We're not worshiping these guys, but we're supplicating that kind of energy, and sometimes you need some symbols. So you might need a protector, just like when you ask for help from anything, from anyone, from anybody, from anywhere. It's just a way, it's a symbolic way of working with it. Do you have a further question about it, Kayun? Or maybe an understanding that I'm not even touching on?
Kayun bowing. No, that's very helpful. And is there a reason why these are often done like in the evening time? Is there something about the mind that's more vulnerable at the end of the day that needs more protection?
Well, if you were a demon, you wouldn't come out at sunrise, would you?
I don't want to come out at sunrise now.
I knew it. You're a demon.
That's why I couldn't come on camera. I couldn't pull my human face back on.
Very, very good cover up there. I like it. So I think it's very it's sunrise. Everything is coming out and fresh and creative and so on. And everything in the night is dark, even though it can be quite romantic also. And but I think it's just that idea that everybody's going to be somewhat unprotected. We're all going to sleep. So maybe saying protector chants in the evening, and that's something we do. Even though this is a Soto Zen monastery and temple, we still do protector chants. I'm not sure which ones we're doing right now. We do them. I know we do them after the Sadhana Mahamudra. Anytime we do anything that's in the Tibetan or the Tantric area, or Shambhala for that matter, I try to include that which I've learned or understood over the years that seems to be really valuable to continue. So that's why some things we do and that are traditionally along the lines of Shambhala or Tantric. Are you getting groomed, Mark? Aw. I got distracted. Millie is doing this to Mark's head like this. That just kind of distracted me. That's your protector right there, Mark. So, did I get closer to what Kayun, what you're asking about, or is there more?
And bowing. No, that's helpful. Thank you. Bowing.
They're just images. They're just, some are, kind of spooky looking or something. But if you look and see, they're. I know when I first started studying this back in the early 70s, they just were very off-putting to me. These crazy little demons and little cartoon monsters and things. It was very irritating, and still irritating to some extent. But I think they can be useful. Although,
How does our negativity protect us, Bowing?
I think when we begin to understand that we don't have to get rid of that, it's just a part of the energy that arises and falls in any living being, and we don't have to join it and become more negative or defend it or try to get rid of it or do anything with it. It's just emotion that takes different angles and slants to it. But it's just like in the Sadhana of Mahamudra, it says pain and pleasure become ornaments, which is pleasant to wear. It's a way of saying that someone who understands the positive emotion, the negative emotion, see, it's just emotion. And we're not taking the positivity or the negativity out of it by saying it's just emotion. So his way of saying it, Trungpa Rinpoche's way of saying it is pain and pleasure become ornaments. It's like there's some aspect of it. He's changed the dynamic from the feeling into some kind of a designation that's more like a concept, but doesn't have the hindrance that a concept has when you believe it, or have the hindrance that it has when you try to reject it or when you try to ignore it. More.
So then how do our emotions protect us, Bowing?
They can only protect you if you don't do anything with them, but you just look at them. If you try to fight with them, then that creates war. Then that takes us back into the swamp of samsara. If you try to ignore them, so it's protection. The protection is there through the mirror. You just look at it. If you look into the mirror of your mind, sitting meditation, or in your everyday life, walking through the kitchen, bumping into someone who's in your way and you're trying to get over to the refrigerator, and negativity arises, just receive it. This is the mirror that everything is welcome in that mirror. There isn't anything but the reflection. And what is a reflection? Consciousness only. But that has to be seen. I'm using concepts, and I'm stuck with the concepts the same as we all are. But I can't speak without words, although some Zen teachers have tried to do that. I think Ramana Maharshi just sat and looked at people for many years before he started teaching. Yes.
Beyond Bowing, how is everything already fundamentally protected?
Because nothing is threatened. But if you think something is threatened, mainly me or my ideas or somebody doesn't like me, or somebody's mistreating me, or somebody's not respecting me, or on and on and on, with just a whole panoply of otherness that is against us or not supporting us, and all the chatter in our mind about who's not treating us well, or who is not realizing how important we are, valuable we are. So, question?
Beyond Bowing, you responded with if we think it's threatened, and I'm thinking, is it really just thinking something?
Yes.
Or is it belief?
It was thinking and belief, very similar. The thinking shows up, and then it's the attachment to the thinking, or the fixation on the thinking in some way, and not being able to see that it's unreal. Not get rid of it. You don't have to get rid of it. Just see that it's unreal. That's why it's so difficult, because the suffering or the pain, the abrasiveness of it can still be there at the same time you see it's unreal. Difficult.
Mozoku Bowing, can the negativity, you say you don't have to get rid of anything, just does it align itself with the vow?
It may. I think the vow is something, the vow to be with all things, or the intention to save all beings, is the personalizing that. Vow to be with all things just mean whatever shows up, I'm receiving it. Whatever comes into my consciousness or into my mind or anything at the risk of losing everything, at the risk of losing my life. As it says in Atisha's 7 points of mind training, if it's better for me to live, let me live. If it's better for me to die, let me die. It's that kind of an understanding that transcends everything. That doesn't mean you get to you're going to necessarily die. It just means that you're aligning yourself with pratitya samutpada, or dependent origination. The personality is still there. The personhood is still there. Once that's liberated, then you actually can, surprise, you can just go play poker. I mean, you can just enjoy yourself because you're no longer bound by right and wrong, success and failure, or what anybody thinks about you. I'm so extremely sensitive to what people think about me. And that has not gone away. That if I believe that, those emotions that come and go, I couldn't do this. This is way too risky. There are too many people, not you guys. You guys all are okay. But most anybody else would come along and think, this is crazy. This is insane to talk this way. This isn't what Jesus taught or whatever. Maybe not that, but any dynamic, even someone who's an atheist or someone who's another understanding of Zen or Buddhism. I couldn't do this if I believed what arose in my mind stream. Still arising as it was 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70. Yes, one more, and then we'll close.
Sanji, this is more a comment than anything, is about the protectors and everything. I mean, there's a reason that Halloween comes in the fall. And it seems to be our fear of death.
What's your question? I don't want to get into any philosophy here, especially the last. In fact, the question, I might just have to have another question after this. I don't know if I want to end on Halloween. Although, is that coming pretty soon? Is that the one where they have the pumpkins? Yeah, go ahead.
But it also has to deal with demons and such.
So what is your question? You're not telling me anything I don't already know.
Aren't those just beliefs that are associated with what our reality is?
Yes. Got out of that one. Did you want to know something about Halloween? What do you want to know?
What year was it like first made?
I'm just guessing, but I would say 1543. Just guessing. I don't know for sure. But does that work for you?
Sure.
Would it make any difference if it was actually 1786? Think about it, folks. I mean, does it make any difference?
Maybe.
That's a good response. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. How old are you?
Well,
12. That was the response of someone who was 12. You said maybe.
I'm coming to you today to ask for your help in bringing together an incredible project, the Community Mindfulness Center. This inclusive space is intended to promote the well-being of our community locally and abroad, as well as to help us discover a sense of well-being and basic goodness. We are trying to raise $1 million for this state-of-the-art facility, which will provide both spiritual and secular programming. We really hope that you can come together to help us make this dream into a reality.